And as we've been discussing, the State of the Union is tonight with President Trump addressing Congress at 9 p.m. Eastern. And so what, if any, discussion may he have on foreign policy and particularly Israel? This has been a really hot topic, of course, more among the right than the left. It almost seems like kind of an intramural debate to an extent. And there's a Politico headline yesterday morning that claims that the Trump team is on damage control after Huckabee's comments on Israel. Senior administration officials, according to Politico, have called Arab officials to explain that that a Huckabee comment on Israel can control much of the Middle East did not signal a policy shift necessarily. So will this be a topic potentially of the State of the Union tonight? Let's welcome in Joel Rosenberg, who is the editor-in-chief of All Israel News. You can find that at allisrael.com. And Joel, I think this is really a fascinating topic. And do you expect that we will hear anything on Israel from President Trump tonight?
Well, it's great to be with you, Jenna, and I'm here in Washington. In fact, one of our colleagues at All Israel News is a featured guest tonight of Speaker Mike Johnson. Hanan Lashinsky is the brother of Yaron Lashinsky, who was, you may recall, a young Israeli diplomat with his girlfriend, Sarah Milgram, who were assassinated brutally last year going to a Jewish event in Washington, and they were killed. And Speaker Johnson has invited Hanan to honor his brother and be his guest at the State of the Union tonight. So I'll be taking Hanan to the Capitol tonight, and it should be a very interesting evening. I think Israel will be a focus tonight, but I don't think it'll be a prime focus, Jenna. I think the president doesn't want to position his policy in the Middle East as being somehow driven by Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, or being driven by Israel. There's so many allegations to that extent, but it's not true. What's happened? Yet Israel will definitely benefit if President Trump destroys the last of the Iranian regime's military offensive capability. There's no question about that. But who else benefits? The United States benefits. Iran's regime has killed and wounded more Americans than any other country in the world over the last 47 years, and they've never paid a price. So I think Iran will be a major focus tonight. I think the president's policies are strong and decisive, but we're at a moment where we're waiting to hear what is his next move, right? Is he going to make a deal with the Iranian regime? I don't think so, but he certainly has been trying. So I don't think Israel will be the focus. I think Iran will be the focus when it comes to the Middle East. Obviously, communist China, Venezuela, there'll be a number of other issues. And of course, most of the topic tonight, I think, will be domestic and the economy roaring and jobs being created and so forth. But Israel's a great ally, but is not a driver of American foreign policy.
And I think that position is a little safer, right, for President Trump, at least right now, especially among the base that, he really needs to incentivize a turnout in Republican primaries. And then, of course, for the general this November. And so, taking more shots, of course, hyperbolically at Iran and China and, some of these easier targets that are, known foreign enemies are a little safer for him. And then going to the economy and obviously boosting that kind of really steers clear of potentially some of the topics that might upset even his base. But this is, in the midst of this interview that Ambassador Mike Huckabee did, this sit down with Tucker Carlson. We talked about it at length yesterday on the program. But yesterday, Tucker Carlson was actually seen by, some who reported that he was seen at the White House. And our good friend David Brody from CNN, CBN, not to be confused. Wow. Two very different networks. So apologies to CBN. That's funny. So David Brody said on just this morning on X that Ambassador Huckabee says Tucker Carlson has undermined President Trump on Israel and said, quote, "I hope they quit letting him into the White House."
Yeah. First of all, big fan of David Brody. Just a tremendously impressive journalist. And not only is he CBN's chief political correspondent in Washington, but he just came on as a writer now, a correspondent for All Israel News. So we're really grateful. And so that article that he posted, we're so glad to have him on board. And David is right. David talked to Mike Huckabee, and I also separately spoke to Ambassador Mike Huckabee in recent days, and Huckabee is pretty clear that what's happening is that Tucker is not just attacking Israel. He's actively trying to undermine President Trump's foreign policy, Trump's character, Trump's decisiveness, and Trump's team. And President Trump has a policy in the Middle East, and it's strong and it's decisive. And Tucker is attacking it in every possible way. So the question is, why is the White House letting Tucker Carlson into the building? Now, we all know that President Trump has a long-standing friendship with Tucker Carlson. And there had been some reporting that the president told Tucker in a meeting several weeks ago, hey, knock it off. You got to dial this thing down. This is because you're attacking me and you're attacking my base. That's what we think happened in that meeting. But what Tucker Carlson did when he went and sat down for 2 hours and 45 minutes with Ambassador Mike Huckabee in Israel was accelerate and intensify Tucker's attacks against the president, against his policies, and against his leadership. And against his base by attacking Christians who love Israel and stand with Israel and are still loyal Americans. Tucker is going right after the MAGA base to blow it up. So all of this is bad, and I think it's fascinating that Ambassador Huckabee has said publicly now, something I've never heard an ambassador say, which is that a friend of the president is now really become an enemy of the president and shouldn't be allowed in the White House. I think he's right about that. But I think David Brody's reporting is excellent, and I think it's going to get a lot more attention. I appreciate that you picked up on it already.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's such a great get. So for listeners who may not know, I mean, I've known David Brody as well, for probably, over a decade. I mean, just phenomenal reporter and, really solid Christian. So that's a huge get for your outlet. So definitely you go to allisrael.com and, that's where when I want to know what's going on in Israel, I don't go to the mainstream media and, some of these other outlets because I trust your reporting and, from especially a biblical worldview as well. I mean, you report the facts, but I always know that it's not going to have, kind of that spin, of course, that the mainstream media has become so famous for and well-deserved the fake news kind of label.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you. That means a lot to me. And that's why someone like David Brody, who's such a strong and great journalist for CBN News and has a little bit of extra bandwidth, I was like, absolutely, would you be our Washington correspondent? Because these are critical times, and having trustworthy reporters who are experienced, who are seasoned, and who have the contacts and know how to evaluate, what they're hearing as to what's true and what isn't. It really is strengthening the All Israel News brand, which is credibility, credibility, credibility.
Yeah. And, and this is exactly why American Family Radio Network exists, because, we know that our audience wants to know what's going on in the news, but doesn't want to have to kind of try to filter out the leftist view and wants to be able to connect those dots of how should I think about this from a biblical worldview perspective. And I can trust that I know that I'm getting this from people who aren't, out talking about the news for other reasons, that may not even just be on mainstream media, but, having some of these pitfalls that you see, some of the other even so-called conservative influencers and all of that. So it is really important. And we love the work we're doing here. We appreciate the work that you're doing as well, Jill Rosenberg. And this is why the collaboration, especially on air, is great. But before we run out of time here, when you mentioned Tucker Carlson kind of being, a weight on Trump and not really giving great advice and all that, I kind of see him as the Steve Bannon of the second term, where he was just, Steve Bannon was around Trump so much and was an advisor and really close to the president in the first term, and really just gave a lot of bad advice and brought in a lot of bad people that without that kind of influence, I think the first term, for a lot of reasons, could have gone better. I mean, it went really well on a lot of different fronts, but then could have gone better. And the Trump 2.0, what everyone expected from this second term, there have been a lot of accomplishments, deservedly, but then some pitfalls. And one of those, I really do agree, I think, is Tucker. And you got to wonder what Trump is thinking, that he hasn't really learned that lesson of maybe who he can trust and who he really shouldn't be listening to.
Well, I want to give the president some space here because, first of all, Tucker's a longtime friend and an ally. And President Trump, to his credit, doesn't chuck friends overboard quickly, right? I mean, so so that's one thing. Secondly, it's clear that the president is not listening to Tucker on Iran policy. Tucker excoriated the president and said, absolutely under no circumstances should you attack Iran last summer. This will cause 20,000 deaths of Americans. It will lead to a forever war. None of that was true, and the president didn't listen to Tucker, and Tucker was proven wrong. Tucker has been pleading, or in a sense, or excoriating the president to not have anything to do with Israel, to cut Israel loose. They're not a good ally, right? And the president isn't listening to that. Tucker sees himself as the voice of MAGA foreign policy, but President Trump isn't listening to him. But he hasn't cut him loose as a friend. But we're at a turning point. I don't mean that as an allusion to Charlie Kirk, although it's not a bad one. Meaning, Charlie Kirk was President Trump's true friend and ally on these issues. Tucker has become an enemy. And I think it's hard. I mean, the president has a lot on his plate. So he doesn't have every moment of every day to think about Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson has 17.1 million followers on X. That is not something that you dismiss lightly, but the evidence here is clear. Tucker Carlson is attacking the president. He's attacking the president's policies. He's attacking the president's personnel, like Huckabee. And maybe most importantly and badly, Tucker Carlson is attacking President Trump's political base, which are 60 million evangelical Christians, most of whom love the president, and even though we don't agree with every single thing he says or the way he says it, believes he is moving forward on pro-life, pro-growth, and a pro-American foreign policy and domestic policy. And Tucker has, for some reason, some sad reason, we have to pray for Tucker Carlson because this is not a man who's healthy. Something is going on inside of him, and he's decided to make himself an enemy of the president of the United States and all of his policies. And I think we're going to watch the president turn against Tucker. Maybe it won't be verbal. Maybe it'll be icing him out. But I think at some point he has to be verbal. He has to explain, why is Tucker wrong? The good news is that President Trump does see Tucker as wrong and isn't listening to him. But I think there's a point at which you have to publicly have a conversation with the American people, and particularly your own political base. Why has Tucker gone off the rails? Because Tucker is a major influencer, and the president needs to deal with him. I think he's tried to help Tucker change, but Tucker is dead set, and that is really a sad thing. As Tucker's a smart guy, but he is going down a very unhealthy and worrisome path. And I don't know if he's, humanly speaking, I don't know if that's redeemable at this point. It doesn't look that way.
Yeah. And, I think saying that there needs to be a conversation with the American public, that's so important when there's the perception, at least, of more influence than perhaps is being given, or more advice than is being taken, and, actually having some of these conversations, and at least, he doesn't have to slam him with one of these nicknames or something like that, but at least saying, here's where I stand on Israel, and while, my friend Tucker may have a different approach, our administration is going to continue on to be a friend of Israel, and I'm asking, the base to support that position as well. I mean, some of those things that kind of quell...
And that's the way you would do it, Jenna, and that's the way I would do it. But remember, last summer, the president did get so frustrated with Tucker that he started calling him kooky Tucker, on this idea that that the president's approach of dealing with Iran in a 24-hour attack, on and ending the Iran nuclear threat like with one attack, was going to somehow lead to a forever war, and the president just started chuckling, and he literally started calling him kooky Tucker. So we'll see.
We'll see. And we got to end it here, Joel Rosenberg. Dear friend, thanks so much for coming on this morning. We're going to see what, if anything, the president signals about Israel and, some of his foreign policy tonight. So State of the Union tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. And as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna at afr.net.